I would like to announce and honor a very special friend today, Mr. Mark Nepo. His heart is open wide, and he is an agent of kindness. He is a friend to humanity, and he is a friend to all of our global family. With over 1 million copies sold, Mark Nepo has moved and inspired readers and seekers all over the world with his #1 New York Times bestseller, The Book of Awakening. A beloved poet, teacher, and storyteller, Mark has been called one of the finest spiritual guides of our time. He is an eloquent spiritual teacher and a consummate storyteller. Best-selling author of over 22 books and recorded 15 audio projects. In 2016, he was named by Body, Mind, Spirit as one of the 100 most spiritually influential living people, and was also chosen as one of OWN's Super Soul 100, a group who have come as voices and gifts to elevate humanity. In 2020, the Book of the Soul was published, and in 2019, More Together and Alone was cited by Spirituality magazine as the best spiritual book, one of the best spiritual books in 2018. Mark was part of the Oprah Winfrey's The Life You Want tour in 2014 and appeared several times with Oprah on her Super Soul Sunday program. He continues to allow us to go into the journey of inner transformation and the life of relationships. He continues to offer these readings, lectures, and retreats. And all of you can visit him at his website, www.marknepo.com. Mark, you are a great soul. You have a resonant heart, and you have an astonishing voice. And we now move into our meditation time. Thank you for being here, Mark.
Oh, thank you, Janet, so much for your kind words, and thank you, Randy and Tom and Sean, Brian, everyone who's made this possible. It's wonderful to be with you all again. So let's begin with a poem of mine as a meditation, and I'll read it twice. And I offer this because in a time when so much discord comes from our certainty, I think it's so important that we open our hearts to what we don't know. And this is called If You Want a True Friend. If you want a true friend, just open your hands and say, I don't know. Say it softly and wait so your other can see that you mean it. Give them a chance to come up with a cup of what matters from the spring they show no one. Let them sigh and admit that they don't know either. Then you can begin with nothing in the way. Go on, admit to the throb you carry in your heart, and let the journey begin. Let me offer that one more time. I think it's so important. You know, whenever I feel that I'm absolutely certain, I try to take what's coming up in me and turn it into a question rather than a declaration. If you want a true friend, just open your hands and say, I don't know. Say it softly and wait so your other can see that you mean it. Give them a chance to drop what they think is secret. Let them come up with a cup of what matters from the spring they show no one. Let them sigh and admit that they don't know either. Then you can begin with nothing in the way. Go on, admit to the throb you carry in your heart, and let the journey begin.
Be with yourself full and free. Give yourself permission to begin again and be with God. Whatever we ask, there is an answer. Write your new name in the stone. It will give you deep awareness that you are loved and never, never, never truly alone. You are stronger than you know, a rock unbreakable, a faith unshakable. In you pure love will grow to begin again and be with God. Whatever we ask, there is an answer. Write your new name in the stone. It will give you deep awareness that you are loved and never, never, never truly alone. Be with God. Be with God. What's holding you back? Why can't you do that thing you've always wanted to do? The gifts that you could bring, if you could just do that thing. What's holding you back? Why can't you be the person you've always wanted to be? Are you waiting for a sign? This very question means it's time to change. And you can change. Whatever we ask, there is an answer. Write your new name in the stone. It will give you deep awareness that you are loved and never, 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 truly, never, 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 truly alone. Be with God. Be with God. Be with God. Be with God.
Wow, thank you so much, Tom. Thank you. You have an incredible voice.
I do try to use that for good.
Okay, let me see if I can get, there we go. Okay, thank you again. Thank you. So I'd very much today like to explore the theme inside everything. And so let me share a few reflections and then continue some of these thoughts in and around some more of my poems. So I'd like to start with a quote from another singer-songwriter who I know very well out here in Michigan, in the States, and that's May Erlewine. And in one of her recent songs, she says, "Make it whole again with our holy hands, as only we can." Make it whole again with our holy hands, as only we can. And I think it's a law of spiritual physics that things always come together and they always fall apart. And every generation is faced with making it whole again. And now it is our turn in these very difficult and trying times to reknit the kinships that hold life together. When all else fails, I feel we are called to turn to the eternal resources that are inside everything. And every tradition speaks of this in different terms, but speaks of our renewal in the face of suffering. How do we try, accept, and begin again in a way that's more giving and more loving? Well, no one has any answers, and I certainly don't, but we can speak to it. We can look at this together. And the first way that is always available to us to be more giving and more loving is to be true and authentic, to return to our realness. And how do we stay true and authentic? Well, one of the first ways is by holding and listening. Holding and listening are two of the oldest medicines in the history of the world. I mean, I can honestly say to you that I don't think I've ever held or been held or listened uh, or been listened to when it hasn't been healing and restorative. Now, certainly there have been times where I haven't liked what I've heard. You know, it may be a truth that I need to face that I wasn't ready to face or I was avoiding. But whenever holding and listening are present, we start to heal. You know, the word authentic, which comes from the Greek word authentes, it literally means the mark of the hands. And so this is inside everything, you know, this connection between our heart and our hands. Our hands actually literally grow out of our heart when we are first forming as a fetus in the womb. The first thing to grow out of the heart are little vestiges of arms, and they are known as arm buds. They look like little red wings. And this is why when we're passionate, we talk with our hands. And this is why one of the signs of a heart attack, we feel it in our arms. So there is always this direct connection between the inner life and the outer life. This is one of the ways we know integrity. Can we do what we say? Can we say what we mean and do what we say? So our relentless care is what makes us whole again. And this has always been so. You know, one other example from history in the East, in Chinese philosophy, there's a Chinese philosopher, Mencius, Mencius. He lived about 300 BC. And he was much in the tradition of Confucius, about 300 years after Confucius. And he also felt that it was in our nature to care. And he had a beautiful metaphor, the way he spoke about this. He said, you know, the way water allowed its true nature will always flow downhill and join other water. The same is true of our kindness. We are naturally kind. We can manipulate ourselves like water to go uphill, sideways, dam water up behind a dam and pressurize it. But allowed our true nature, we will always flow to each other in kindness and join. That's a beautiful metaphor. Also in the Chinese culture, the impulse to care is a fundamental value, and it's known as Ren, R-E-N. And also Mencius, when he was asked to describe, well, what are, you know, some of his students asked him, what do you mean by Ren? What is this? What are you talking about? He said, well, I can't really explain it, but I can say this. If you were to see a child about to fall into a well, the impulse in you to drop everything and save that child, that's Ren. In the Jewish tradition, there is a term tikkun olam, and this means we are here to repair the world. Now, since we are the world, we must start by repairing ourselves. And this brings us back to inside everything. And I can say to you that when I retrieve my poems, rather than, I don't say author them, but retrieve them and give breath to them and life to them, that's how I repair myself. It's how I listen to the mystery and grow. I listen with my heart, and the poems that come become my teachers if I stay in conversation with them. Now, this is not just a creative process, but an introspective one. It really doesn't matter if you write it down. And this is why I share it. I want to encourage each of you to listen with your heart to life in your days and to stay in conversation with the teachers that show up. So this first poem is a short one. It's called Inside Everything. And I'll read this one twice. Inside everything. Keep trying to hide, and in time, you become a wall. Keep trying to love, and in time, you become love. Our journey on earth is to stop hiding so we can become love. Everything else is a seduction and a distraction. Courage is staying true. Inside everything. Keep trying to hide, and in time, you become a wall. Keep trying to love, and in time, you become love. Our journey on earth is to stop hiding so we can become love. Everything else is a seduction and a distraction. Courage is staying true. This next poem is about listening to the story we are in rather than insisting on the story we want to tell. Because as soon as we insist on the story we want everybody to know about us, then we stop growing. Because life is the ultimate storyteller, and we are just play parts in that one endless and beautiful story. So this is a more recent poem called The Great Waters. In the beginning, I thought I was going somewhere. I thought we all were. But falling in while trying to cross, I finally understood the journey is to follow the river, all the rivers, especially the ones no one can see. The soul is a fish whose home is in those rivers. So I can take you across if you want, but the secret is to go everywhere by going nowhere. And I will be here when you fall in, which is not a failure, but an awakening. You know, I believe so deeply that our heart is our strongest muscle. And I can affirm that despite the suffering I've experienced throughout life, my heart has never let me down. It remains my greatest teacher. This poem speaks to the wisdom of a broken, open heart, which no one can escape, a wisdom we all are feeling and a wisdom we all need right now. This poem is called The Lesson. When young, it was the first fall from love. It broke me open the way lightning splits a tree. Then years later, cancer broke me further. This time it broke me wider the way a flood carves the banks of a narrow stream. Then having to leave a 20-year marriage. This broke me the way wind shatters glass. Then in Africa, it was the anonymous face of a schoolboy beginning his life. This broke me yet again, but this was like hot water melting soap. Each time I tried to close what had been opened. Oh, it was a reflex natural enough, but the lesson was, of course, the other way, in never closing again. The great Sufi teacher Hazrat Inayat Khan said, God breaks the heart again and again and again until it stays open. Now, of course, this brings up a great paradox because certainly we have to make choices. Certainly, you know, if you hurt me and I don't feel it's safe to be with you, I have to decide whether to open up to you or not. But this is not the same thing. Because if we look at the sun, imagine the sun is a great teacher in this. The sun emanates light and warmth in all directions without preference. It doesn't say, well, today I'll shine more on the roses. It happens without preference. So when we do have to make choices around trust, around betrayal, around safety, well, that's like opening and closing the blinds. But the heart, our heart is our inner sun, and that never gets muffled, that never gets shut. So sometimes, the truth appears and the authenticity appears through the stories of others, and all we have to do is bear witness to it. And so I want to share a story with you here. And this is a story of a friend that I made who is Canadian. He lives in Montreal. His name is Eric, and he's a TV producer. And we both were teaching, and he's also a Sufi. And we were both teaching at a conference and fell right in love with each other. He was one of those people, his eyes is just lit, and we started having meals at the conference together. And on the last day, he told me this story, and shared with me and gave me permission to write about it. This is called Depth Seeks Us. And I also should say, as I share all these feelings and images and these insights, don't worry about tracking them. Just as you listen, to Tom's beautiful music and other music, and just let it wash over you. Your heart will get what you need. So this is called Depth Seeks Us. We met in the mountains far from the sea. But in his eyes, I saw the sea. Somehow we'd known each other for a long time. He was born and raised in Montreal, and his English, cupped in French, lapped like small waves in the air between us. On the third day, he said, I don't tell this very often, but I was not very happy as a young man. I worried about the world and if all that mattered would make it through. He looked younger than he was. He folded his napkin and continued and said, I was annoyed by everything, never sure if those who put things together could outlast those who break things apart. And honestly, it made me somewhat dark. He leaned back and went on. Everyone thought I was too critical, but we were all trained in the mind at such an early age. Anyway, I was 21, half interested in everything, and we were on a harbor ship full of tourists, and I was annoyed at their eagerness. The clouds were thick and the sea was choppy, and suddenly a school of belugas circled the stern and everyone went running. I saw their soft whale heads round through the surface and go back into the sea, and I thought, how disappointing this is all we get to see. He sighed and shook his head a bit and went on further. I wandered to the bow to get away from everyone and leaned over the rail. The ship bounced into the waves, bits of spray on my face. It felt good to be left alone. And then from under the bow, a mountain of a fish lifted the ship. It was a great blue whale peeling back the sea. And there, right before me, its gigantic eye staring into mine, an eye as wide as peace, as deep as all time. It stared through the bottom of my heart. I tell you, that moment, eye to eye, felt like a lifetime. And in that brief lifetime, everything was aglow. I can see it all now. The water streaming from its godlike eye, the God in that massive eye, searching for the God in me. And before it swept back into the sea, it took all my doubt with it. Everything seemed softer and truer. By now, his eyes had widened in the telling, and we were drifting into each other even more. He took my hand and said, I was born in the eye of the whale. I was born in the eye of the whale. Teachers are everywhere. Teachers are everywhere. In the Hindu tradition, there is a term upa guru, which means the teacher that is next to you at this moment. For Eric, it was quite dramatic and came out of the mystery. The whale, imagine lifting up the boat and staring right through his soul, erasing all of his doubt. Well, it might not be as dramatic for us, but we have to be ready and keep an open heart for the teachers that are everywhere. Here, this is an instance of a small teacher for me, and this years ago was a teacher was a little fly. This is called At the Window. I was at the window when a fly near the latch was on its back, spinning, legs furious, going nowhere. I thought to swat it, but something in its struggle was too much my own. It kept spinning and began to tire. Without moving closer, I exhaled steadily, my breath a sudden wind, and the fly found its legs, rubbed its face, and flew away. I continued to stare at the latch, hoping that someday the breath of something incomprehensible would right me and enable me to fly. So the mystery of our oneness, the presence of God, could show up as dramatically as a whale under your boat at sea, or as a fly spinning its legs at the window that you happen to be staring out of. We never know. We never know. This poem is called Thinking Like a Butterfly. Monday, I was told I was good. I felt relieved. Tuesday, I was ignored. I felt invisible. Wednesday, I was snapped at. I began to doubt myself. On Thursday, I was rejected. Now I was afraid. On Saturday, I was thanked for being me. My soul relaxed. On Sunday, I was left alone till the part of me that can't be influenced grew tired of submitting and resisting. Monday, I was told I was good. By Tuesday, I got off the wheel. So I hope you recognize that process where no one is exempt. We are all under the influence of submitting and resisting while we try to find that center again and again. Now, did I really get off the wheel on Tuesday? No, of course not, because I'm human. So why did I end the poem there? Well, because I have to have something to aspire to. And this, I believe, is the purpose of all poetry, of all art, to marry what is with what can be. If we only stay with what is, we are barely tethered to this earth. And if we only stay with what is, we can easily be burdened and buried under all of the harshness of existence. No, our job is to not look away, is to stay grounded and see what's possible. And so we try to marry what is with what can be. And that's why I had to end the poem there. You know, one of the things, the great lessons for me as I get older is that I keep, the deeper I go, the more I feel different feelings at the same time. I can be happy and sad at once. I can be clear and confused at the same time. And any one feeling felt deeply enough will lead to all the others. You know, it's interesting in our mental life, in our acuteness in the world, we all are problem solvers, and that's a great skill, but it is not a worldview to live by. And while we get good at sorting, prioritizing, and choosing, I have found the things that are the greatest lessons are when I am asked to allow everything in, to absorb and integrate, not sort and choose. So this next poem comes from a time of great loss and grief for me. It was a few years back now, but during about a 2-year period, both my wife, Susan, and I lost both my parents and a dear, dear mentor of mine. We lost our beloved dog, Mira. Our next dog, Zuzu, is sleeping behind me right now. And we lost Susan's mom. And so there was just this very deep period of grief. And it was a summer day, and here out in our backyard, it was a beautiful day. And I was sitting on our deck next to a beautiful unfolding fern, and the light was magnificent on it. And I fell into this, oh my God, this deep moment where all this grief just cascaded over me of all these losses. But because I was exhausted, I couldn't choose between the beauty of the day and the depth of my grief. And so I just stayed open to both at the same time. And it led to this poem, which was a great teacher for me, called Adrift. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away, and all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I'm adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad, and everything is beautiful. And this is a good example of, I didn't know the insight that comes at the end of this poem before I started the poem. And again, I share this because it's not just about poetry. When we can follow any feeling, pain, grief, wonder, confusion authentically, the reward will be a deeper insight from the mystery of oneness. So I didn't know when we got to the end there, in the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away, and all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I'm adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. We are rewarded for being authentic. We are rewarded for being true. This next poem is a small poem, and it has been a great teacher for me, especially during difficult times. So let me share this one and read this one twice. It's called Mind as Keyhole. Mind as keyhole. And I call it that because we tend in our modern world to think like the mind, the brain, is the generator of everything. And I feel mystically and spiritually, no, the mind is an inlet. The mind is not contained. The mind is a passageway. So mind as keyhole. It goes like this. Beneath the cloud, everything is gray. Above the cloud, everything is light. Calling the cloud unfair is being a victim. Trying to conquer the cloud is being a hero. Calling the cloud a cloud is the beginning of peace. Mind as keyhole. Beneath the cloud, everything is gray. Above the cloud, everything is light. Calling the cloud unfair is being a victim. Trying to conquer the cloud is being a hero. Calling the cloud a cloud is the beginning of peace. We are always asked, when dropped into the depth of life, how do I as a living part relate to the mysterious whole? So this next poem is very recent. And it's offered me a lesson about this and about inner courage. So I want to share this and speak about it a little bit, and then I'll read it again. It's called Notice. Imagine a lantern in an open boat, the light flickering as the boat drifts in the night lake. Now imagine it rains and look closely at how the drops plop in the lake and thud in the boat and bead on the sides of the lantern. Notice how the flame doesn't go out. Actually, let me read that again before I speak to it. Notice, imagine a lantern in an open boat, the light flickering as the boat drifts in the night lake. Now imagine it rains and look closely at how the drops plop in the lake and thud in the boat and bead on the sides of the lantern. Notice how the flame doesn't go out. So here, not the eye of a whale, not a fly on the window, not a moment where the fern was beautiful and my grief was deep, but this small metaphor comes as an upaguru, as a teacher. So the image of a lantern in an open boat, in open waters, is a teacher, an image of the tender, enduring courage of how to carry the light of our soul in the lantern of our heart, in the boat of our life across the sea of life. And of course, no one knows how to do this. This is why we pray. This is why we practice. This is why we need each other. But this poem offers an extended image about the courage to live in the open. And how does this work? Well, as I reflected on this, it led to these questions. We are each challenged, each of us, to discover, how do we live in the open with courage? And I invite you to personalize this as I speak about it. How do we live in the open with courage? How do we tend the light within us, that inner sun that never stops emanating light and warmth in all directions without preference? How do we care for the lantern that is our heart? How do we care for the boat that is our life? Well, to live out these questions, let me take it one step further in our human terms. We are each asked to personalize and inhabit the courage to be who we are, the courage to face each other, the courage to stay in relationship, and the courage to be kind and useful. So I ask you at another time to journal, if you are moved to, where are these things right now in your life? Where does the courage to be who you are show up? Where does the courage to face each other live in you? How are you struggling with the courage to stay in relationship and the courage to be kind and useful? So let me read this small teacher, this small metaphor that came to me one more time now. Notice. Imagine a lantern in an open boat, the light flickering as the boat drifts in the night lake. Now imagine it rains and look closely at how the drops plop in the lake and thud in the boat and bead on the sides of the lantern. Notice how the flame doesn't go out. You know, sometimes when we can be authentic enough, we become conduits for the stories of others, just as in the story about Eric and the whale that brought his soul closer to him. You know, it was Carl Jung, the great Carl Jung, who said, "The poet is the lightning rod for the unconscious." I actually read that when I was 19 and an undergraduate at Cortland State in upstate New York. And it really helped save me because I was a young poet and I couldn't make sense of how was my heart so open to so many things, especially things beyond my own experience. And when I read that, the poet is the lightning rod for the unconscious, it made total sense to me. And of course, it's not just about poets. This is at the heart of all compassion. Living our truth opens us to the truth of others. So this next piece is the story of another that came through me as well. It's called The Symmetry of Kindness. The train slammed into the station, injuring hundreds. The engineer was critically hurt. People toppled over each other, bouncing across seats and against windows. There was blood and glass everywhere. One woman shimmied her way to the platform when part of the station ceiling fell, pinning her. She thought she would die. Then the hands of fellow passengers lifted her, one to another, and she was saved. Later, she wanted to say thank you, but didn't know who to thank. Once on the mend, she retrieved a list of those who were with her that day. Now, one by one, she looks them up, asking if they had helped her. Each of them smiles and says no. Once with them, she can see what each needs, and so she helps them along. She unpacks groceries for an old woman, listens to a widower's story, and gives a single mom her umbrella. This has gone on for weeks. She keeps trying to find those who helped her, only to help those she finds. Finally, it occurs to her that this is God's symmetry of kindness. She will never know who helped her, so she can thank and help everyone she meets along the way. You know, we are often asked to open our hearts and give, not just for the kindness that comes, but because who we're drawn to give to is waiting to be our teacher. There's another small poem of mine, goes like this: the mystery is that whoever shows up when we dare to give has exactly what we need hidden in their trouble. The mystery is that whoever shows up when we dare to give has exactly what we need hidden in their trouble. So I offer this next poem as an encouragement for the year ahead. And I'll also read this one twice. They don't all bear reading twice, but some do. This is called To Be and Belong. Let go your want for greatness and feel the tool that's in your hand. Let go your fear of emptiness and receive the wave still reaching from the beginning. It only wants to enliven you the way water refreshes every hole. So let the web of things entangle you. Only stars are free and they are so lonely. Curse what you will, but give thanks that everything alive wants something from you. To be and belong. Let go your want for greatness and feel the tool that's in your hand. Let go your fear of emptiness and receive the wave still reaching from the beginning. It only wants to enliven you the way water refreshes every hole. So let the web of things entangle you. Only stars are free and they are so lonely. Curse what you will, but give thanks that everything alive wants something from you. You know, I can bear witness that there is nothing as messy and magnificent as being a spirit in a body and time on earth. And we are asked repeatedly to heal and mend and help each other rediscover who we are, where we are, what matters. And when things break down and don't go as planned, as we have experienced greatly during this last year, there are always three archetypal questions that we are called to ask ourselves, first personally and collectively in our society. So, as the pandemic has forced us to be still for months on end, we are forced to ask these three questions. What needs to be repaired? What needs to be reimagined? And what needs to be left dismantled? Now that it's broken, what should stay dismantled? What should we not put back together? Collectively, here in America, of course, one big thing that needs to stay dismantled is structural racism. But let's these questions are very relevant today, and let's bring it back personally. So later on in your breakout groups, this question will be there for you to explore, and in a very personal way. Can you ask yourself, and you don't need to take this down, it'll be there. Randy and Janet have it for you later. Ask yourself in this moment in your life, in the midst of this pandemic, what needs to be repaired? What needs to be reimagined, and what in your life needs to be left dismantled? Can you describe each, and what an initial step toward each effort in your life might look like? Oh, I want to thank you. I have one more poem, but I want to thank you. I hope and look forward to when I can be with you in person again. I've been blessed to be with you a few times in person in your wonderful community, have felt the love and care and service that exists there in you and between you. So it's great to be a part of that, even from afar. So this last poem for today is called Free Fall. If you have 1 hour of air and many hours to go, you must breathe slowly. If you have 1 arm's length and many things to care for, you must give freely. If you have 1 chance to know God and many doubts, you must set your heart on fire. We are blessed. Each day is a chance. We have 2 arms. Fear wastes air.
Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. When the storms of life are raging, I hear music in the air. When the storms of life are raging, I hear music in the air. When the storms of life are raging, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, oh, there's music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Up over my head, I hear music in the air. Up over my head, I hear music. Yes, I do. I hear music. I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. When the tide of hate is rising, I hear music in the air. When the tide of hate is rising, I feel music in the air. When the tide of hate is rising, I hear music in the air. And there must be a God somewhere. Over my head, all right, I hear music in the air. Over my head, I hear music in the air. Up over my head, yes, I hear music in the air. And there must be a God somewhere. Up over my head, yeah, yeah, I hear music in the air. Up over my head, I hear music, I hear music. Over my head, I hear music in the air, yeah, yeah. Up over my head, I hear music in the air. Oh, there must be a God. Yes, I'm sure there must be a God. I'm sure there must be a God somewhere.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for that beautiful song. And Mark, oh my goodness. There are teachers everywhere. Thank you for being our teacher today and being conduits for others. You allowed us to do that today. Thank you, thank you. And I really encourage all of you too to at least get one of Mark Nepo's books. This one in particular, More Together Than Alone, is a great one. And we thank our friends at Banyan as well for their assistance in ordering those books. Mark also has many events that go on throughout the year, and you can reach him at live@marknepo.com. And our first question comes from Nazat Jamal. And the question is, in what way can we show up as love and as seekers in a relationship with someone who lives in a preaching, solid answers, certainty way?
That's a great question. And of course, as you know, I have no answers. What I share are examples, not instructions, but let me speak to that from my experience. This is something we all struggle with. And I go back to that image of the sun that I mentioned. On the one hand, I think all we can do is be a greenhouse for others with our love and our light, our warmth, so that they grow naturally how they're supposed to grow. And at the same time, love ourselves and honor our own spirits so that we're not in abusive situations. So this, like everything else, is a paradox, because on the one hand, it's not our job, I feel, it's not our job to make others good. It's not our job to bend or control, but our job to unceasingly provide warmth, light, and presence, and at the same time, not fall prey to the bending of others. I'll just say one other thing about this that also comes from Carl Jung, that in the indigenous traditions in Polynesia, there's a term mana. This is different from the Christian term mana. This, and it's spelled a little differently. There's two ends. Mana in the indigenous tradition means the spirit that animates everything. Stone, wood, you, me, water, or my dog sleeping behind me. And Carl Jung, when he became aware of this, he said, well, I want to add a psycho-spiritual definition to mana. And he defined it in a human terms as the unconscious influence of one being on another. Not by debate, not by persuasion, not by control, not by intimidation, but the unconscious influence of being, one's being and presence on another. And so I turn to that a lot when struggling with that. Thank you. Wonderful question.
Okay, so the next question we have comes from Lori Malenka, and the question is, do you think we choose our parents?
Do we think we choose our parents? Not that I'm aware of. Of course, we're guessing about all these things, but I would say that, and this is the way I hold that and reincarnation and different things, that less defined as conscious choice and more defined in the same way that physically, like magnets draw things together. And there are forces in the elements in nature that a waterfall will always bring that water down to the bottom. I think there are inclinations of spirit that are at work beyond our conscious will that draw us to congregate in kind of the eternal ocean, if you will. And so I don't have any control. I don't think I can will it, but I do think there are these aggregations or clusters of spiritual energy that sometimes take human form and that sometimes take other form. I think we hold on to, often we talk about reincarnation in the West in a too particular a way. And I noticed that so many times when people speak of that, they always come back as they were famous people. No one was ever the street sweeper in Damascus, who was just as holy as King Tut. So of course, and of course, no one knows.
Okay. The next question we have is from Randy Purcell, and this question is, what is your personal daily practice?
Well, my daily practice at this point in my life, next month I'll be 70, which seems hard to believe. I met people my age when I was younger. I thought they were ancient. Doesn't feel so ancient right now. But at this point in my age, unless I need to, my practice is one of integration. That is, I don't stop and meditate unless I really feel that I need that to recenter. But I try to meditate when I'm impatient at the line at the pharmacy. I try to really focus on integrating the many different practices. And one thing I do, which I would invite other people listening to do, this is just mine, but I start each day, I have 3 simple vows that I start each day with, and I encourage you all to find your own. But each day, the first thing I do is I open the blinds, fully aware in my heart that I'm letting light in. The second thing I do is I take care of our dog, Zuzu, so that I am caring for something living. And the third thing is my wife, who is a night person, and I'm a morning person, so I'm always up first. I make coffee for her before she gets up so that I'm doing something for someone I love. So the difference between habit and ritual is that I can speed through any one of those or all of those, and it won't be a vow any longer. But on those days when I can mindfully, heartfully say, this represents letting in light, this represents caring for something living and doing for someone I love, that changes my entire day. So I invite each of you to create 3 simple vows by which you start your day.
Thank you, Mark. Got a few more here before you get on and about. We also have some people here from Ireland, so thank you to everyone from around the world. And you know, Mark, you offer some great programs, so I encourage people to go. You've got some coming up very soon, so those are great at live@marknepo.com. So the question right now is, do you have any thoughts for someone whose brother has just passed away?
Oh, well, first off, my heart is open to you, and it is so difficult. And you know, I think um, again, what I've learned in that no one knows that exact. This is a paradox, though we all experience grief. No two people experience it the same way, and so the first thing is encouraging you to honor the person who's grieving and to inquire what wisdom do they have for their suffering that the rest of us need. What are they learning that we can learn from? You know, I think there is grief is such a, we could do a whole, you know, Sunday or weekend on grief, of course. It would be worthwhile to do. But I know that this paradox that when our heart is broken, somehow strangely and wonderfully, our tears water the break in our heart, and our deepest gifts grow, which wouldn't be exposed to air if our heart didn't break. Now, would I like it to be different? Yes. I don't want to do that all the time, but there's a certain aspect of wisdom. There's many other ways that wisdom comes through beauty and love and wonder and grace. And there is an aspect of wisdom that comes because the heart is broken and our tears water what's in the break. And how do we hold each other? So what is it that the person who's grieving needs? And often it is to honor their grief. There is no timeline for grief. There is no time to get over it. Um, there is only the keeping company, the compassion, the being with. Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm sorry for that loss.
And this one comes from Kelowna. Anne Marie asked the question, when did you know your life's path was poetry?
Oh, well, thank you. You know, that's a very amazing thing. I think I started before I knew that that was my path. I experienced life as a poet as a child, though I had no words for it, because I always have experienced from the earliest the world, God, the universe has spoken to me through metaphor before I even knew that word metaphor. But I would be a little child and I would see the wind through the trees, and I felt this, the trees were saying and the wind were saying, pay attention, this is like what is this like, what is this like? But I think that when I knew that I was a poet, I was a freshman at Cortland State University in upstate New York, and I was walking off the hill. The university was on a hill, and on the bottom of the hill were, you know, dozens of college bars in the town. And I was walking down on a late Friday afternoon to just explore, new there, first semester. And a sudden wind went past my head, my ear from behind. And it stopped me. And then I waited, and of course you can't see the wind, but across the valley on the other hill, maybe a mile away, I saw that wind in the trees across the way. And somehow I understood the reach. And though it made no logical sense, in that moment, I knew I was a poet.
Thank you. And we've got 2 last questions here. The first one is, how do you be spiritual around people whose consciousness is not opened yet, especially people like family? That's a very big question.
Well, I think the first thing is to humbly accept that everyone has spirit, and some of us have own our own path and our own relationship with that spirit, and so we're each awake to it and aware of it and listen to it with different timings. So just because our timing is different, I think the first thing is, and I tell myself this, is to resist judging, to resist saying that, quote, they are not awake, because we are they. There is no they. You know, one of my smaller a three-line poem of mine is, those who wake are the teachers, those, oh, sorry, those who wake are the students, those who stay awake are the teachers, how we take turns, how we take turns. So I think there is this increasing way of being, not hiding who we are, and not imposing on others who we would like them to be, but welcoming all of who is with us, regardless of the language they speak. And I don't mean physical language, regardless. You know, I have a dear, dear friend who is nervous whenever the word God comes up, but is in awe of quantum physics. So we talk about God through the language of quantum physics. It doesn't matter to me what language we use. Why not? You know, even an atheist, you know, I think that if you believe that there's anything larger than you, you're a mystic. The problems start to come when we start to try to define what is and name what is larger than us. Then everybody goes to their theological or scientific corners. I don't really care what we call it. Let's just talk about our relationship to everything larger than us. So I can talk about God with an atheist, because an atheist believes that there's something larger than them. They just call it nothing. So I call it everything. What's the difference?
Thank you. And that question actually was from Lucelena, who's in Mexico, so a long way away. Yeah. And so one last question here that we can answer is, I find that I let my mind drive my journey, and I'm now exploring how to listen for the wisdom of my body, including the wisdom of making decisions. What is the importance of listening to the wisdom of our bodies?
Well, and the importance is that we make different, when we listen to our body and our heart, especially for me, as well as our mind, all of those things, the more clear of a vessel we can be, the more we can see what real choices are, and then we make different decisions. So it's like, if I look at a situation with one eye, I will only get so much information. So if I only look at something with my mind, I will not have a full, accurate picture of what's before me. Oh, I'll see things, but I will see the silhouette of things and not the three-dimensional living presence of things. But when I can open my heart and I can open my body and I can feel what's before me accurately, then through a clear heart and a clear mind and clear eyes, I make different choices. And that's why it's so important to listen. I like to think of it as, I try to move at the pace of what is real. What do I mean by that? That's when the body, mind, and heart slow down enough to move in unison, something deeper in the mystery opens up. It's always there, but it opens to us. And of course, being human, I can't stay there all the time, but that's a practice, is how to return to moving at the pace of what is real, so that there's very little between me and life.
And that was from Sherry Ulansky, that last question. this question, I think you answered, and we'll end on this, Mark, but maybe you can add to it. How does someone reconcile internally with a partner who does not live with a moral code, but who is deeply spiritual? And this is from Fazio.
That could you say the
Yeah, it says, how does a person reconcile internally with a partner who does not live within a moral code, but who is deeply spiritual?
Well, I would offer this way. I hold that, and this is we're all challenged to be open and loving. So what does that mean? That means rather when we say the word reconcile, what I hear when I say the word reconcile, when I hear that, is how do I make it fit my moral code? I would offer that each of us needs to deepen and expand the question, not how can I make someone else's spiritual living fit my world, my spiritual map, but how can I relate to and learn from someone who doesn't abide by my spiritual code or my moral map? I'll give you a quick example is, one of the times that I was teaching, I had asked, and some of you who've been with me know I've asked this question sometimes, to ask people to journal about it, be in conversation with another about one thing you hold to be true. And I had a wonderful grown son, he was in his late 20s, mother and son be at this retreat together. And so they were exploring this question together. And they, in the middle, while everyone was doing it, they came up to me and said, well, we're kind of stuck. I said, oh, what's happening? And so the mother said, well, Jack, we'll say Jack, just to give a name, Jack, and we'll say Mary was the mother. But so Mary said, well, I shared what I hold to be true, but my son Jack said, I don't hold anything to be true. And so, we didn't know we're at an impasse. And I encouraged them to keep listening to each other. And I encouraged Mary, if her son had come back from China, she would say, oh, what was it like to visit China? What was it like to live there? What was the geography like? What were the people like? So I asked her, can you ask your son, what's it like to live in the land where nothing is true? What's it look like there? What led you there? How is it for you to live there? So how do we inquire, not reconcile? How do we inquire of the spiritual land others live in so that we can be more together than alone?
Mark, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We will have our hearts really full again sometime soon. I hope sooner rather than later, where we can have you back in person here in Vancouver. But, we can do lots of things online too. And again, if you want to know more about what Mark is doing and how he's being online, you can go to live.marknepo.com. Thank you with a grateful heart, and we will give you our unity blessing. We love you, we bless you, and boy, do we appreciate you. Namaste.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, everyone. So wonderful to be with you.